So Roblox just released an improved constraints tool, which lets you more easily create mechanical constraints between base parts, as well as weld multiple of them together, so you won't need to use a third-party plugin anymore. But as usual, leave a like and subscribe to support the channel, also check out my Patreon page, and let's get into the video. So there is this Devforum post about the improved constraints tool, which is a studio's beta feature, where the Roblox developers are saying that they are excited to announce a new beta aimed at enhancing the existing Studio Reborn constraints tool. These improvements addresses main pain points you have shared with us and introduce additional functionalities to the streamline of your workflow. And to enable the tool, you just go to Find the Beta Features and select the checkbox of the Improved Constraints tool, which I'm going to be showing in a minute. And now there is this new Dragger framework paragraph, which overviews that the new Improved Constraints tool utilizes the new Dragger framework. And what this new Dragger framework is, as you can see from this video, of the before and after, this Constraints tool uses the functionality of the Quality of Life Dragger beta improvements, which was also a different beta feature. But continuing, it utilizes the new Dragger framework for grid alignment, snapping, and easy attachment rotations. And this easy attachment rotations is also shown right here in this next video. This should make placing the attachments in the correct position and orientation a lot easier right from the get-go. So you already overviewed these two videos, but this third one, I'm going to zoom it in a little bit. As you can see, the new constraint tool even lets you rotate the attachment that you just placed on the base part. And this is a lot better for stuff like, for example, the draggable door system that I was showing in my previous videos, or even the draggable drawer, because you have to mess around with the orientation of the attachments. And having an option to do it immediately is going to be way easier than just changing the properties. Then there is the Enhance Weld tool. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning, since as you can see from this video, you are now going to be able to actually weld multiple parts together. And I was using a plugin for that, but now there won't be a need for it anymore. But now, pressing the weld button now welds all the descendant base parts that are touching within the selected parts. This has been a highly requested feature, so please let us know what you think and how we can make it even better. And I'm going to give a suggestion in this video, because it would be nice to have an option to weld everything together and the weld constraints to actually go into only one selected part. So unlike in this video, where the weld constraints are basically just separated between these parts, it would be nice for all of them to go only to one selected part. And there is also this note, when only two parts are selected and the weld tool is pressed, the two parts will be welded together regardless of whether they are touching or not. And this is a persisting behavior. Then there is the undo functionality, where the undo, while having the constraints tool activated, will undo the last placed attachment, making it easier to correct a misplaced attachment. But the undo after exiting the constraint tool will undo the whole constraint and both associated attachments. So this video from the top right here, you can see that this person here is undoing the attachment placement, where this video on the bottom is undoing the whole operation. And there is also visual feedback improvements, where they've added a visual feedback to indicate whether you are able to place the second attachment on the item your mouse is hovering over, where the red shape indicates that it's not viable and the green shape indicates that you are good to go. And again, it's presented in this video. So normally, as you can see, placing the second attachment inside of the same base part would be basically pointless and wouldn't really need a constraint. And then there is another note, when you are trying to weld two parts together to a single assembly or two separate anchored assemblies, the improved visual feedback will be a gray line. And this is because the weld will have no effect during the physics simulation. So just connecting two anchored parts together is going to have this gray line, while connecting two normal parts is going to have a blue one. Then here is the attachment visualization, where the attachments now show a arrow for both of the primary and secondary axes. And this was previously only enabled when you are actually selecting the attachment instance. And a really good next thing is the part pass-through. When building a constraint and after placing the first attachment, you can toggle the part pass-through with the G key to make the parents of the first attachment transparent, so this part right here that the person is selecting, allowing you to place attachments through it. And it's kind of more for like more complex builds, let's say, where you have a lot of stuff going on, and basically where you have to drag the model out, then connect the base parts with the constraint tool, and then move the whole model back in. So the pass-through basically just makes it a bit easier. And then here is the mentioned hotkey menu, which appears in the bottom right corner after selecting the constraint tool. And now the improved constraint tool adds the hotkey menu to the viewport when the tool is activated, making it easier to reference how to use the added functionality. And this includes the hotkeys for exiting the tool, attachment rotation, part pass-through, hiding the hotkey menu, and enabling and disabling the snapping. And then after this part there is basically the known issues, where you have these 3 points. The first one is the primary axes are pointing in the direction negative to the surface's normal, where previously it was facing the direction positive to the surface's normal like before. And this fix is going to come in 2 weeks. And then the second point, upon first opening the place file and selecting the constraint tool, the hotkey functions don't work until you select the viewport via clicking the viewport, panning the camera and so on. And this is not an issue once the viewport has been selected at least once. So if the hotkey menu isn't working for you, you can just try pressing on the menu and then moving the camera. And then there is this, which is, we recognize that there is a lot of room for improvements regarding welding workflows. And lastly, I also need to say that this is still a beta feature and Roblox might be making some changes, so it might be different for you by the time you are watching this video. Some of this stuff might be disabled and enabled, as well as new functionality and different changes. So that's basically everything for this Devforum post, and let's just jump into Roblox Studio and see how we can use this tool. But first you need to enable this feature by going into File then Beta Features and then scrolling down to the Improved Constraints tool right here. We just need to enable this option and then simply press on Save and then just restart Studio. So let's just see how to use the Constraints tool. I'm just quickly going to make 2 new base parts and then just go to the Model tab, and then the Constraint tool is going to be right here. So let's just select this base part for example and then try to create for example a rigid constraint. And I'm going to have this menu in the bottom right corner now, where you have the escape to exit, T to tilt towards the camera, then the rotate around camera, and it's nice that this is actually camera related. Then you have the Alt and W, which disables the weld visualization, and then Alt and D, which enables and disables the visualization of constraints. Then the G button, which like I previously mentioned is going to be the pass-through, then the Shift which disables snapping, and then the Shift and X and C which enable and disable the snapping. And these functions on the bottom change the properties in the snapping tab right here. And of course we have the H key which toggles the hotkey help. So let's actually put the attachment into this part, and now we are going to have this new line, as well as the visual feedback. So I am unable to add another attachment into this part, but for example I can add it into this one, or even the base plate. And let's see how the pass-through is going to work with this part. And it's as simple as making it a little bit transparent. And then you have the weld and the constraint visualizations. So if I enable the constraint one, it's basically just going to add a little bit of an outline into this attachment. But let's actually just connect these parts together. And it's going to snap like this because of this being the rigid constraint. So I am able to again visualize this constraint right here with the Alt and D. But let's actually see the undo function now. So if I press Ctrl and Z, it's basically going to remove the attachment from the second part right here. But if I add the connection again, then exit the constraint tool by pressing escape and then do Ctrl and Z, it's going to remove the whole constraints from both of these parts. But now let's see what happens if I make both of these parts anchored. Now if I go to the create tool and then select the weld constraint, if I add it from this part, you can again see that we are going to have a visual feedback, where you have this red line or a cylinder that's going to be fixed if I try to connect it to, for example, the base plate, which is anchored, or even this part which is anchored as well. And the gray visual feedback indicates that these parts are going to have no effect during the physics simulation. But if I try to add another part, which isn't going to be anchored, and then try to connect them, you can see that this is going to be now blue. But let's actually see the Enhanced Weld tool now, where I'm just going to make a lot of parts. And I'm just going to have this pillar here, so let me just try to select everything, and then while having the weld constraint, I'm just going to basically just press on it. And now everything is going to be welded together, except it's going to separate these welds well to the parts that are actually just touching with each other. But again, it would be nice, in my opinion, to for example just make this tool move the welds into only one base part. Even if these are parented into a different object, they are still going to work because of their properties. But anyways, that's basically going to be the overview of the constraint tool, which again is adding a lot of new quality of life updates. But yeah, again go check out my Patreon page, and also leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. And thank you for watching, hope everyone had a nice day, and see you guys.